This is a real interview, translated into English. You can find the original story via the link in the description. I'll describe the situation briefly. I needed to learn Japanese, and very fast. In about 8 months, I managed to reach roughly a B2 level. Japanese is probably one of the 10 hardest languages in the world, so the result surprised even me. What's important is that I learned it almost only through YouTube and Anki. Basically, it was just listening practice and spaced repetition. I don't think I used anything else. What's important is that I learned it almost only through YouTube and Anki. Basically, it was just listening practice and spaced repetition. I don't think I used anything else. I even caught myself thinking, why am I doing this? Maybe I should open a textbook instead. This won't work anyway. But strangely, that was the moment when my progress exploded. So yeah, today we'll talk about this in more detail. Sit back, and I'll try to explain everything properly. I'm an architecture student. At that time, I was in my first year, and in the middle of it, I got an opportunity to go on an exchange program to a Japanese architecture university starting from my third year. The main condition was simple but tough. I had to study at my university and learn Japanese very quickly, according to specific requirements they gave me. I needed to understand lectures, listen and follow spoken Japanese, and be able to speak because during my studies, I would be sent to intern at an architecture bureau. So I had to communicate, understand speech, and integrate into the environment immediately. That was my main motivation. As for languages, apart from Russian, no, I didn't really know any. It's a bit embarrassing, but Russian is my only native language. I can understand Uzbek and say a few things, but I'm one of those people from Uzbekistan who doesn't really speak Uzbek. The method itself was actually very simple, and I didn't invent it. As far as I remember, it was first developed by some Polish learners who were in a similar situation back in the early 2000s. Later, I adapted this method for myself. I'll share the sources later, but the main example for me was a guy named Katsumoto. He also moved to Japan and needed to learn Japanese extremely fast. In about 1 year and 8 months, he reached what is usually called basic fluency. He could speak, read, and write without major problems. The core idea of his method was to create an artificial language environment for 16 to 18 months, from morning until night. The point is not to learn the language in the traditional academic sense. When people talk about learning a language, they usually imagine textbooks, grammar rules, and lessons. This method is different. Instead, you surround yourself with the language so completely that you are forced to understand it. Over time, understanding turns into speaking naturally. I decided to try it because I didn't really have a choice. I found out that I had this opportunity, and then I started searching online, like everyone does. Not only about Japanese, but about how polyglots learn languages in general. I watched what they did and looked at their results, and I realized that their pace was not enough for my situation. I needed something much more extreme. On Katsumoto's website, it was clearly written, "Listen to the language for at least 16 hours a day." That basically means all day except for sleep. He even suggested listening during sleep, but I didn't do that because I think it's unhealthy for the brain. Still, that's how I came to this method. At the beginning, I was very motivated by his example. I saw that he had achieved those results about 15 years ago, at a time when the internet barely existed. Today, we have smartphones and unlimited content, so I felt I had no excuse. At first, I listened almost all the time, from morning until night. I didn't even take my headphones off at night. I started with in-ear headphones, then bought Sony over-ear ones with noise canceling, and basically lived in them. I tried to fully immerse myself. There were days when I really listened for 16 hours, and honestly, that was more like the minimum. At the start, I tried to do even more. Later, the number dropped to around 15 to 16 hours because I had university and work. At that time, I had 2 jobs, then 1 full-time job plus university. It was very hard, both physically and mentally. The key thing about my case is that I combined this with work and studies. Anyone can learn a language if they have no job, no university, no responsibilities. That's easy. But when all of that exists, it becomes much harder. I always had one earbud in, at university, at work, everywhere. I worked in an architecture bureau, and I always had a small video playing in the corner of my screen. Even when I was doing mental work, I was still listening. It was constant. For the first 2 months, I was literally glued to my phone. Friends joked about me, took photos of me walking around like that. I knew I looked strange, but I understood I had to do it fast. At university, I honestly ignored lectures too much. That was bad. I was physically there, but mentally focused on the language. At work, I did the same at first, then slowly found a balance I still keep. Physically, it was very hard. At the beginning, my head was burning. It felt like my brain was boiling from the information flow. You pause the video, but the sounds keep playing in your head. It's exhausting. I believe this is a skill you can train. Before Japanese, I had terrible concentration. I couldn't focus on anything for even an hour, but this forced me to develop that ability. On the first day, I tracked everything. My longest uninterrupted session was about 4.5 hours. Total listening that day was at least 11 hours. It was extremely difficult at first. At the beginning, you understand nothing. Zero. Your brain just needs time to get used to the sounds. First, it starts recognizing repeated sounds, then repeated words. For me, real understanding started around 320 to 350 hours. I tracked everything very precisely, hour by hour. In the first year, I logged everything carefully. Before that point, doubts were constant. I started on February 24th, and by early March, I was asking myself, what am I even doing? I was tired, overwhelmed, and wanted to quit and open a textbook instead. But I had already studied other people's results for 2 months before starting. I knew what results should appear and when. Logically, I trusted the process, even when emotionally it was very hard. Academic learning couldn't give me what I needed. I had to understand speech, talk to people, and function in society. That's impossible with textbooks alone. The first real sparks came earlier than 300 hours. I survived on those moments. I used Anki with the 2,000 most common Japanese words. Because those words are so frequent, it was impossible not to hear them during the day. Every time I recognized a word I had studied in the morning, it felt like an explosion. I understand this! That feeling kept me going, even though it came and went with fatigue. Let me quickly explain Anki for people who don't know it. Anki is an app for spaced repetition. Basically, it helps you review words at the right time. It's free on Android, and on iPhone it's paid, around $25 to $30. But it's still simple. You download it, get a ready-made deck, and start. People use Anki not because you flip cards, but because of its spaced repetition system. It kind of simulates your memory. It decides when you should see a word again. For example, you learn a word today, then Anki shows it again in a week, then later again. After enough repeats, the word becomes mature, and you're much less likely to forget it. The best part is that it's automated. You don't need to plan anything. I didn't start Anki immediately, and that was a big mistake. I was lazy at first. When I finally began, I went to extremes. I used Anki too much, like 2 hours a day, and that was dumb. Then I did the opposite and dropped to 10 to 15 minutes a day, which was too little. For me, the best balance was about 40 to 50 minutes. It took me 2 or 3 months to find that rhythm. Also, Anki is not where you learn the real meaning. In Anki, you just get a basic translation. Real meaning and usage come from content, listening and reading. At one point, I got obsessed with Anki and thought, more cards equals faster progress. But that's not how it works. At the start, I used basic frequency decks, the most common words. But from day one, I also added words manually. Anki lets you create your own decks and add cards yourself. Word on one side, translation on the other. And for Japanese, the community has built a lot of tools that make word mining extremely easy. For example, you watch a show with subtitles, click an unknown word, and it gets sent to Anki automatically, with the word, translation, a screenshot, and even a short audio clip from that moment. One click. There are Android dictionary apps like Jisho and similar tools that work great for Japanese. For English, there are many options too. You just need to search. There's also Migaku, browser extension plus mobile app. It works like those Japanese tools. You can watch videos inside it, generate cards, and it sends them to Anki automatically. It's paid, around $5 per month. It can also generate better subtitles for YouTube videos in a couple of minutes, which makes everything much easier. And yes, it works for English too. When I say 16 hours, it doesn't mean 16 hours of new videos nonstop. Often, I replayed the same 10 to 15-minute video 10 to 20 times until I understood it. That's what really melted my brain, especially in the beginning. I even chose one main YouTuber as my language parent. His content was simple and energetic, not childish, but easy to follow. Rewatching him gave crazy results. But yeah, I got sick of him fast. I watched almost all his videos, and now I can't stand them anymore. Still, it was strategic. I wanted to fully understand a few creators first, and only then expand to wider content. After 6 to 7 months of that, random videos became much more understandable than if I had watched everything from different people. When you watch a video and stop for every word, the video becomes painfully slow, like a 10-minute clip turning into 3 hours. That has a name: language tolerance. How long you can handle content while understanding almost nothing. Mine was very low, so I went to extremes and rewatched the same videos many times. A popular trick is to rewatch content you already know in your native language: movies, cartoons, books. You won't understand the language fully, but you'll understand the plot, so it's easier to catch words from context. The main thing is to remember, the language isn't endless. That phase where a short video takes forever doesn't last forever. I downloaded around 20 to 25 videos and replayed them all week, all day. When a video started feeling empty, I already understood most of it, I deleted it and replaced it with a new one. Step by step, the pool changed. And I was picky about content. I didn't want only brain rot videos. I also watched a lot of architecture content from day one. So I ended up learning some professional words early, even before basic everyday vocabulary. Weirdly, that felt really good. There are two ways to watch: active watching, where you pause and try to understand every word, and background watching, where the language plays while you do other things. At first, it feels like active watching must be better because it's serious. But background exposure is not useless at all. Actually, for fast progress, it's the key. The main shift happened when I stopped thinking like, now I study Japanese, and then I go back to real life. Instead, I tried to keep Japanese around me all the time. The idea is to trick your brain. Replace your usual native language content with content in the language you're learning. In the beginning, it's painful, but if you manage to make it a habit, so you automatically open YouTube in Japanese, that's when my progress really exploded. If we talk about percentages, my case is extreme. I tried to make it almost 100% background. I trained myself from day one to listen in the background and still catch meaning. I also avoided easy content, like anime or movies with very clear diction. I focused on YouTube, street videos, real-life dialogues, messy, natural speech. And I kept it playing in the background all the time. Even now, I can focus on a conversation and still have a video playing behind it. About words. I think it's better to avoid silly associations and word lists as the main method. With Anki, you only get the basic link. Word A equals translation B. After that, the real work is hearing that word again and again in real content. And here's the thing. If you constantly listen to the language, the most common words will start popping out on their own. Honestly, I didn't even finish the classic 2,000 most common words Anki deck for a long time. I picked up most of them naturally from content first. I only finished it later, just to prove it to myself. For passive listening, I trained my brain to hold attention on two things. It sounds impossible, and normally it is. But with language, it's different. You don't need 100% focus all the time. Your attention goes up and down. And in the beginning, repeats saved me. If I missed something, whatever, I would hear it again on the next replay. Also, understanding doesn't always mean knowing the translation. Sometimes you don't know what a word means, but you notice it everywhere. Then one day you finally learn the meaning, from Anki or context or a dictionary, and all those old moments connect in your head like a puzzle. That's a real click. Some people prefer fully active listening, subtitles, pausing, looking up words, and doing it for 2 to 3 hours like a focused study session. I respect it, but I couldn't survive that with university and work. I would burn out fast. My approach was more like, listen as much as possible, all the time, and don't obsess over perfect understanding. The hardest part for most people is the beginning, when a 10-minute video turns into 3 hours. But if someone keeps going consistently, listening and spaced repetition, they usually break through that wall pretty fast. The bigger problem comes later. Early progress, A1 to A2, is relatively quick. You start catching the main idea of videos. And then people hit the next wall, where you want to understand everything, not just the general point. That's where most people quit, because now it requires real time and real effort. If you ask me how the progress looked, it was not linear at all. It came in big jumps. I would move slowly, and then suddenly something would unlock, and my understanding would shoot up. Only now, around B2, it has clearly slowed down. In the beginning, those jumps were especially strong. And honestly, what I did had to work. The routine was extreme, but the input was so massive that results were inevitable. If I had seen someone with the same routine before I started, someone who explained everything clearly and honestly, I would have followed the schedule even better and probably achieved more. My biggest problem wasn't the method. It was that sometimes I went into extremes or had doubts and wanted to quit. People often think background listening means you don't pay attention. In my case, it was background with effort. I tried to combine two actions: walking somewhere and listening, working and listening, living and listening. Also, for me, listening was usually watching while listening. At the start, pure audio doesn't help much because you understand the world mostly through your eyes. When you see and hear at the same time, progress is faster. I started doing only audio much later because I don't listen to podcasts and I didn't have interesting audio-only content. What I did instead? I took videos I had already watched many times, ran them through a tool that cut out pauses, turned a 20-minute video into 14 minutes, converted it to MP3, and used that as background audio. So when I had to focus hard at work, I would play a folder of known videos that I had replayed 20 to 30 times. It worked like natural spaced repetition. I would do Anki first, and then the same words would repeat again in real context during the day. I heard the word but don't know the meaning, and tolerance. Yes, I had that feeling all the time. A word sounds familiar, but I don't know the translation, and I want to pause and look it up. I forced myself to build language tolerance, to stay calm when I didn't understand something. I saw many people destroy themselves with the mindset, I need results now. I need to understand every word. That mindset kills the fun and turns language learning into a second job. So most of the time, I just let it go. If I didn't remember a word today, I would meet it again tomorrow anyway. Sometimes, when a word became really annoying and kept repeating, I did quickly check it. And honestly, that would be more productive. But I was influenced by the experiment purity idea, so I sometimes kept it as a challenge. Let's see when I finally understand this word naturally. Here's the important part. When people hear B2 in 8 months, they imagine full skills. But my case was mostly listening plus speaking. For the first 5 to 6 months, I basically didn't read Japanese. I couldn't recognize kanji, and I didn't build that visual connection. Later, I started reading, only because my university required official proof of my level. I had summer break, quit work for a while, and for about 1.5 months, I read a lot. Like 13 to 14 hours a day to prepare for the exam. It worked. But after the exam, I stopped reading again because I wasn't interested. For the first 5 to 6 months, I basically didn't read Japanese. I couldn't recognize kanji, and I didn't build that visual connection. Later, I started reading, only because my university required official proof of my level. I had summer break, quit work for a while, and for about 1.5 months, I read a lot. Like 13 to 14 hours a day to prepare for the exam. It worked. But after the exam, I stopped reading again because I wasn't interested. If I did it again and I didn't need only speaking, I would probably add 1 hour of reading per day from the start. But I followed the idea of natural order. First, you listen a lot, like a child. Learn to hear and speak, and only later you build reading skills. And yes, it's a weird feeling when you know a word by sound, but you see it in kanji, and your brain has zero connection. I've seen the same thing in bilingual half-Japanese people. They sound native and speak naturally, but they struggle with reading. I felt that similarity, and it motivated me, and also made me stubborn, because I really wanted to prove my approach was right. When it comes to speaking, the funny thing is, right now, I avoid it. I've been avoiding speaking practice for about 3 to 4 months already. My first real speaking moment happened early. After about 1.5 months of immersion, some Japanese students came to our university. At that time, I was watching tons of dialogue videos, so for 1 or 2 minutes, I could look like I spoke Japanese really well. I copied the rhythm, gestures, facial expressions, not just words. They got excited and even wanted to interview me. And then, I froze. They asked normal questions, probably about architecture and my future plans, but I didn't know the key words, so I couldn't answer. It was honestly hilarious. You could see the confusion on their faces. I didn't feel too embarrassed, though. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Output depends a lot on your personality. If you are very shy and you struggle to communicate even in your native language, don't expect magic in a foreign language. Many language learners ignore this. I like Steve Kaufman's idea. Stop being afraid of mistakes and just talk. That mindset helped me, and I was lucky because I never had big issues with communication. Also, because I did so much listening, I already knew how Japanese should sound. That's a huge advantage. My goal wasn't to speak like, me go there, you go here. I wanted to speak naturally, with good pronunciation, maybe even close to native. I checked italki, but I didn't like the idea of paid, forced conversation, where a tutor pulls words out of you. I wanted speaking to feel real, not like interrogation. I tried a local Japanese conversation club, but it felt like they talked to us like we were kids, so I stopped going. Then I found the best solution for me: VR chat. It's not really a game, more like a social platform. Japanese and English communities there are huge. I joined, started talking, and pretty quickly found a group. We still talk today. When you have strong listening skills, you don't remember words, you remember patterns and sentences. You hear a phrase you already know passively, and your brain goes, "Oh, so this is how you say it." Then you try it. Little by little, you build a usable speaking base, but it still takes time, like 100 to 200 hours of real practice. I followed Stephen Krashen's ideas a lot: input, silent period, etc., but I disagree with one fantasy people sometimes get. If I listen enough, I'll suddenly start speaking perfectly. No. Speaking is a skill. You must train it. Input helps, but it doesn't replace practice. What I truly believe, starting too early can hurt you. Not because speaking is hard, but because early speaking can lock in bad habits. Later, after 400 to 500 hours, you might hear yourself on a recording and think, "Why do I sound so unnatural?" And then you realize you started speaking when your input base was too weak, so you built tons of errors into your default speech. Fixing that later is painful. You have to correct yourself consciously, record yourself, analyze mistakes, and rebuild patterns. So yeah, speaking is important, but timing matters. I was lucky and unlucky. at the same time. Yes, I passed the exam, and it's important to explain this clearly. After that, I also tried to take a higher level Japanese exam. In Japanese, levels go from N5, lowest, to N1, highest. But here's the key problem. These exams do not test speaking at all. Yes, I passed the exam, and it's important to explain this clearly. After that, I also tried to take a higher level Japanese exam. In Japanese, levels go from N5, lowest, to N1, highest. But here's the key problem. These exams do not test speaking at all. I passed the exam with a passing score, not a high one. You can pass even with about 50% of the total points. Listening was included, yes, and that's where things get interesting. When I later tried the next level exam, I still barely read Japanese at that time. I walked into the exam and understood almost nothing in the written sections, which was expected. But I got a perfect score in listening. That says a lot. So this brings us to the main question. Is it correct to start language learning with listening? My answer now is, it depends on your goal. It depends on your goal. I know people who never wanted to speak Japanese. They love Japanese literature, and their only goal was reading. After 1.5 to 2 years, they read fluently, but they don't speak. And that's fine. I even have a friend whose YouTube video about this got 150,000 views. He reads Japanese perfectly and doesn't speak at all. So everything depends on your goal. If your goal is to quickly integrate into a language environment, understand people, and speak naturally, then in my opinion, the best strategy is listening first. A lot of listening. Minimal reading at the beginning. I talk to people who are already C2 level, and many of their problems come from mistakes they made early. They read a lot, but didn't listen enough. As a result, their language sounds less natural, and fixing this at a high level is very hard. You have to consciously retrain things that could have been absorbed naturally at the start. So if the goal is speaking and real-life communication, my conclusion is simple. Listen first. Listen a lot. Read only a little at the beginning. I should say this first. I'm not a migration expert. But Japan has always interested me, so I've followed this topic closely. Yes, getting Japanese citizenship is considered difficult, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. There are realistic paths. For example, marriage is a strong option. A spouse visa in Japan is very powerful. Life is unpredictable. You move to a country, meet someone, fall in love, and suddenly many foreigner problems disappear. That's something people often forget to consider. In my case, I plan to move to Japan after I finish university as an architect. I already have an architecture bureau that accepted me and is waiting for me after graduation, so I'll start with a work visa. As far as I know, after about 5 years of legal work and paying taxes, you can apply for permanent status and later citizenship. It's not as scary as people think. In fact, despite a lot of negative news about foreigners, Japan is slowly simplifying migration processes, not tightening them. Personally, I'm confident about my situation. I'll work, pass the required professional exams, and over time I'll reach the needed number of years for citizenship eligibility. Many people ask, why learn the language if you might not be able to live there? For me, this isn't an issue. I've already been living in a Japanese language environment for almost 2 years. When I move to Japan, the only real challenge will be everyday life details, things you can't fully learn without living there. And that's normal. So for my case, I'm not worried. My migration path is quite straightforward, and learning the language only makes everything easier. This experience was huge for me. Doing something that feels almost impossible really changes you. Of course, it gave me confidence. I now know physically and mentally that I can do very hard things. That alone gives a strong boost of motivation for future challenges. But the biggest change is concentration. I honestly can't fully explain how much my focus improved. A few days ago, I spent 24 hours reading without stopping. It's not healthy, of course, but I wanted to test myself. Can I do it? And surprisingly, it wasn't that hard. Right now, I'm reading 14 to 15 hours a day because I need fast reading skills to pass professional architecture exams in Japan. I have a short window before university gets busy again, so I use this time fully. I read before calls, after calls, basically all day. The most important thing is that this concentration is not only about language, it transfers to everything. I noticed it clearly when I had to learn Japanese architectural software. There was a 15-hour course split into parts, and I just absorbed it. No suffering, no resistance. I simply watched and learned. Before Japanese, I couldn't sit still. I was constantly distracted. At work, at home, at university. I always felt like I didn't have enough time or the right conditions. Now, that feeling is gone. The main result for me is simple. I can focus deeply in almost any conditions if I understand why I need it. That skill alone changed everything. The most important thing is this. The exchange program I learned Japanese for never happened. I should have gone in my 3rd year, but I didn't. The reason is simple. In Uzbekistan, no one except me reached the required language level. It was a fully funded scholarship program with unreal conditions. Honestly, opportunities like that don't come twice. But nobody was really interested or committed enough. Maybe the promotion failed. Maybe the organization failed. I don't know. But in the end, from a big group of motivated students, only I got the result. I was upset. Really upset. Because during that time, I could have focused on my career. Architecture projects, competitions, professional growth. Instead, I spent all that time learning a language. But that language gave me something huge. Extreme concentration. Now I'm in my 3rd year, and I still have 2 years before graduation and before I move to Japan on a work visa. And these 2 years are powerful. I can do almost anything. Right now, my focus is clear. Japanese English. My architecture career. I prepare projects for international and Japanese architecture competitions, build my portfolio, and work like a professional already. So yes, the original plan didn't work out. I didn't reach that exact milestone. But the final goal never changed. Working and living in Japan. Only the path changed a little. My name is Artyom, and I've done around 2,000 interviews with people who moved to completely different countries. I hope you enjoyed this story, and that it maybe helped you improve your English. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.